Chapter 2. Fantine. On a spring evening in 1818, in the village of Montfermeil, not far from Paris, two little girls were playing on a swing outside a small inn. Their mother, a big, red-haired woman with a plain face, sat on the doorstep of the inn watching them. "You have two very pretty children, madame," a voice said from close beside her. The woman looked round and saw a young woman with a child sleeping peacefully in her arms. The mother was young and pretty, but she looked poor and unhappy. She did not smile, and lines of sadness ran down the side of her pale cheeks. Her clothes were old and dirty, and she wore a tight, plain cap over her beautiful blonde hair. "Thank you," said the woman. "Why don't you sit down for a minute? You look tired." When the young woman had sat down next to her, the red-haired woman introduced herself. "My name's Thénardier. My husband and I manage this inn." "My name's Fantine," the young woman said. "I used to work in Paris, but my husband died, and I lost my job." She could not tell Madame Thénardier the truth, which was that she had been made pregnant by a young man who had then abandoned her. "I left Paris this morning to look for work in Montreuil," she continued. "My little girl walked some of the way, but she's very small. I had to carry her, and she's fallen asleep." As she spoke these words, she gave her daughter a loving kiss, which woke her up. The child's eyes were as wide and blue as her mother's. With a little laugh, she jumped off her mother's lap and ran to play with the two girls on the swing. "What's your little girl's name?" Madame Thénardier asked. "Euphrasie. But I call her Cosette. She's nearly 3. The two women watched the children playing together. "Children make friends very easily, don't they?" Madame Thénardier smiled. "Look at them. They could easily be sisters." At these words, Fantine did a very strange thing. She took Madame Thénardier's hand and said, "Will you look after my daughter for me?" Madame Thénardier looked at Fantine thoughtfully, but said nothing. "I can't take her with me," Fantine continued. "I have to find work, and that's not easy with a child but no husband. As soon as I find a job, I'll come and fetch her. Will you do that for me? I could pay 6 francs a month." Madame Thénardier still said nothing. But a man's voice from inside the house called, "We'll take 7 francs a month and 6 months in advance." Fantine agreed. "And another 15 francs for extras," called the man. "You will have them," said Fantine, assuming that she was talking to Madame Thénardier's husband. "I have 80 francs. "Does the child have enough clothes?" the man asked. "She has some beautiful clothes," Fantine replied. "Plenty of everything, and silk dresses like a lady. They're all in my bag." The man's face finally appeared in the doorway. "Then we agree to look after her for you," he said. The next morning Fantine kissed her daughter goodbye and left for Montreuil, crying as if her heart would break. "This money will be useful," Thénardier said to his wife. "Now I can pay off all my debts and stay out of prison. I'm proud of you. You set a very clever trap." "Without even intending to," his wife replied. 1 month later, Thénardier was short of money again, so he took Cosette's beautiful silk clothes to Paris and sold them for 60 francs. The couple dressed Cosette in rags and gave her very little food, which they made her eat from a wooden bowl under the table. The dog and the cat, who ate with her, were her only companions. Fantine, meanwhile, found work in Montreuil and asked for news of her daughter every month. The Thénardiers always replied that she was in good health and very happy. At the end of the year, however, Thénardier was not happy with just 7 francs a month. He demanded 12, and Fantine paid without protest, happy that her daughter was being well cared for. The Thénardiers, who were loving and gentle to their own daughters, Éponine and Azelma, treated Cosette like a slave. They made her get up before dawn every day and do all the dirty jobs around the house, while Éponine and Azelma wore pretty clothes and played with dolls. By the age of 5, Cosette had become a thin, pale-faced, silent child. Misery had made her ugly, and only her beautiful blue eyes remained. The Thénardiers did not feel guilty about treating Cosette badly, because Fantine had stopped sending them regular payments. "The child is lucky to have a home at all," they told everybody. "Without us, she'd be living on the streets." When Fantine first arrived in Montreuil, she had immediately found work in a factory. She rented a small room, sent money regularly to the Thénardiers, and for a short time was almost happy. She forgot many of her problems, and dreamt only of Cosette and her plans for the future. But her happiness did not last long. Although she was careful to say nothing about her daughter to anyone, other women at the factory soon discovered her secret. An unmarried woman with a child was a terrible thing in those days, and Fantine lost her job. She tried to find work as a servant, but no one would employ her. She finally managed to earn a little money sewing shirts, but she was unable to send money regularly to the Thénardiers. That winter, Fantine saved money by not having a fire, and developed a small, dry cough. By the following winter, her debts had increased. The Thénardiers wrote her a frightening letter in which they told her that Cosette had no clothes, and that they needed 10 francs immediately to buy her a new dress. Fantine, who did not have 10 francs, but who was afraid that her daughter would freeze to death, went to the barber's shop. She took out her comb and let her blonde hair fall down to her waist. "Such beautiful hair," the barber said. "How much will you give me for it?" Fantine asked. 10 francs. "Then cut it off." After selling her hair to the barber, Fantine was able to buy a woolen dress, which she sent to the Thénardiers. The Thénardiers, however, were very angry. They had wanted money, not clothes. They gave the dress to their daughter Éponine, and Cosette went on shivering. A few weeks later, Fantine received another letter from the Thénardiers. This time, they wanted 40 francs, because Cosette was very ill and urgently needed medicine. Fantine felt desperate. She did not know how to obtain such a large sum of money. As she was wandering around the town, desperately trying to decide what to do, she noticed a crowd of people in the market square. She approached them without thinking, and discovered that they had gathered around a travelling dentist. Forgetting her troubles for a moment, she smiled at the dentist's humorous efforts to sell the people of Montreuil false teeth. Suddenly, the dentist saw her. "You've got lovely teeth," he said. "If you sold me your 2 front teeth, I'd pay you 40 francs. Fantine ran home, upset and disgusted. "My hair will grow again," she thought, "but teeth would be gone forever." But then she thought about her daughter, and her own appearance suddenly seemed unimportant. That evening she visited the dentist at the inn where he was staying, and allowed him to remove her teeth. Fantine could not sleep that night. She sat on her bed, cold and shivering, and looked at the 2 coins shining on the table. Then she gave a blood-stained smile. "I'm happy," she told herself. "My baby isn't going to die." Fantine earned less and less money from her sewing, and the Thénardiers demanded more and more money to look after Cosette. Fantine spent whole nights crying. What could she do? She had sold her hair and her teeth. What else could she sell? And then she decided that she had no other choice. She would have to sell herself. She became a prostitute.